When her husband publicly declares, "You're not my wife anymore," and brings his mistress into her family lakehouse, Harper finally stops protecting him, only to reveal that the house he thinks he owns is legally hers, protected by her father's secret family trust. First subscribe. You're not my wife anymore. Tanner said those words loudly, standing on the wooden dock of the lake house Harper had called home since childhood. He did not say them privately. He did not lower his voice. He wanted everyone to hear. The fishing guide across the water stopped mid-cast. On the porch, Tanner's mother Marlene slowly lifted her teacup and smiled as if she had been waiting years for this moment. And beside Tanner stood Presley Nash. His assistant. His secret. And now, apparently, the woman he wanted to bring into Harper's family home. Harper had not even planned to come that morning. A few hours earlier, Otis, the caretaker who had watched over the property for years, had called her. "Harper, strangers are unloading furniture onto the property." At first, she thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe Tanner had invited someone. Maybe there had been some misunderstanding. But when Harper arrived, she saw a moving truck parked beside the house. Men were carrying sofas, boxes, suitcases, and expensive outdoor furniture across the lawn. Then she saw Tanner. He stood there in white linen, sunglasses resting against his collar, looking completely comfortable. Like he owned everything. The lake. The trees. The porch. The house her father had built with his own hands. And then Harper saw Presley. She was wearing Harper's mother's straw hat. The same hat her mother had worn during the last summer before she died. Harper's heart tightened. "What are you doing here?" Tanner asked coldly. Harper stared at him. "This is my house." Tanner gave a quiet laugh. Not the laugh of a man surprised. The laugh of a man who believed she was being ridiculous. "Do not embarrass yourself, Harper." Presley stood nearby, watching silently. Then Tanner stepped closer. "You always become dramatic when you feel left out." Harper looked around. Her family photographs were still inside. Her mother's rocking chair was still on the porch. Her father's old fishing equipment was still by the dock. How could she possibly be the one who was left out? How could the man I married stand inside my family's home and make me feel like a stranger? Tanner lowered his voice. "The divorce is basically done." Harper said nothing. Then he delivered the words that would change everything. "You're not my wife anymore." For a moment, Harper felt nothing. Not anger. Not tears. Just silence. Because sometimes, the cruelest words are also the clearest. She looked at the water. The same water where her father had taught her to row. The same porch where her mother had braided her hair. The same home where Harper had grown up surrounded by memories that money could never replace. Tanner pointed toward the driveway. "Go home." Harper slowly looked back at him. Then at Presley. Then at Marlene, who was still sitting comfortably on the porch. And for the first time in 15 years of marriage, Harper stopped trying to make excuses for the man she had loved. She reached into her bag. Her fingers closed around an old brass key. Her father's key. Without saying another word, Harper walked past all three of them. She opened the front door, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. Outside, Tanner's smile disappeared. He grabbed the handle. "Harper, open this door." But she kept walking. Because he had just made one terrible mistake. He had reminded Harper that this house had belonged to her long before she ever became his wife. The pounding on the front door echoed through the old lake house. "Harper, open this door." Tanner's voice was loud, angry, demanding. But inside, the house felt strangely peaceful. The familiar scent of cedar wood and lemon polish wrapped around Harper like an old memory. She walked slowly through the hallway, touching the photographs her mother had carefully framed years ago. Every picture reminded her of one simple truth: this was never just a building. It was home. She stopped beside the fireplace where her father's favorite rocking chair still faced the lake. For years, she had remembered his words without fully understanding them. "Harper," he used to say, "people will see land. You must always see love." At the time, she smiled and thought he was simply being sentimental. Now she realized he had been preparing her. Outside, Tanner kept shouting. Presley laughed nervously, and Marlene complained that Harper was being childish. Harper ignored every voice. Instead, she walked into her father's old study. Dust floated through the afternoon sunlight as she opened the bottom drawer of his oak desk. Hidden beneath faded maps and handwritten letters sat a small cedar box she had not touched since his funeral. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside was an envelope with her name written in her father's handwriting. "My sweet Harper." Tears filled her eyes before she even opened it. The letter was short. It spoke about family, memories, and protecting the lake for future generations. Beneath it rested another document, thick, official, stamped with legal seals. The Doyle Family Preservation Trust. Harper slowly turned each page. Then her heart stopped. She was the sole trustee. The trust clearly stated that no spouse, partner, creditor, or future family member could occupy, lease, borrow against, or claim the lakehouse without Harper's written permission. Unauthorized entry was legally considered trespassing. She read the sentence again. And again. Could love really leave behind a shield this powerful? "Dad, you knew someone might try to take this from me." For the first time since Tanner's betrayal, Harper did not feel broken. She felt protected. Her father had seen beyond the future she imagined. He knew that one day someone might value the lakehouse only for its price, while Harper would value it for its memories. She wiped away her tears and reached for her phone. The first call was to Otis. "Change every gate code immediately." His answer came without hesitation. "I was hoping you'd say that." The second call was to her attorney. Harper calmly read the trust number, the property clause, and the occupancy restriction. Her lawyer became silent for a moment before saying, "Harper, he has absolutely no legal right to be there." Outside, Tanner slammed his fist against the door one more time. He believed he was about to win the house. He had no idea he had already lost it years before, on the day Harper's father signed the trust. Harper folded the letter carefully and held it against her heart. This time, she was not protecting a marriage. She was protecting her family's legacy. The next morning, Harper drove back toward Elk Ridge Lake. She had spent the night reading every page of her father's trust documents. She had cried. She had remembered. But now, there was no hesitation left in her. When she reached the property, she saw Tanner's vehicle near the dock. Presley was standing on the porch. Marlene was sitting in the same chair where Harper's grandmother used to drink tea. For a moment, Harper simply watched them. They were acting as if nothing had happened. As if they had not entered her home without permission. As if Tanner had not looked her in the eyes and told her she was no longer his wife. Harper stepped out of her car. "Tanner." He turned. His expression immediately hardened. "You came back." "Yes," Harper replied calmly. Presley crossed her arms. "This is getting ridiculous, Harper." Harper looked at her. "No. What is ridiculous is that you are standing in my mother's house wearing her belongings." Presley's smile disappeared. Tanner stepped forward. "You need to stop this." "Stop what?" "Trying to control me." Harper almost smiled. Wasn't it strange how quickly a man could call boundaries control when he was used to having everything his way? Tanner lowered his voice. "We are still legally married. I have every right to be here." Harper looked directly into his eyes. "No, you don't." He laughed. "You really believe that?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I don't believe it, Tanner. I know it." She opened the folder. "I am the sole trustee of the Doyle Family Preservation Trust." Tanner's face changed. Only slightly. But Harper noticed. She continued. "The lake house is protected by the trust. You have no right to occupy it, lease it, use it, or access it without my written permission." Marlene stood suddenly. "That is impossible." Harper turned toward her. "My father made sure it was possible." Tanner grabbed the papers from her hand. His eyes moved quickly across the pages. For the first time, he was not angry. He was afraid. "This was the moment I realized he had never feared losing me. He had feared losing what belonged to me." Harper took the documents back. "You have 10 minutes to gather your things." Tanner stared at her. "You cannot throw me out." "I already did." She turned to Otis. "Change the gate codes." Otis nodded. "Already done." Tanner rushed toward the driveway. His key no longer worked. He tried the gate code. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Then Harper pulled out her phone. "I am calling Sheriff Boone." Tanner's voice became desperate. "Harper, don't do this." She looked at him quietly. "You told me I wasn't your wife anymore." Silence. "So stop expecting me to protect you like one." Minutes later, a sheriff's vehicle appeared at the end of the driveway. Sheriff Boone stepped out carrying a folder. He walked toward Tanner. "Tanner, I reviewed the trust documents." Tanner swallowed. "This is my wife's property." Boone shook his head. "According to these documents, it is Harper's trust property. You were given no permission to occupy it." Presley slowly removed Harper's mother's straw hat. Marlene said nothing. And Tanner finally understood. The woman he had humiliated was no longer standing there asking him to love her. She was standing there enforcing a boundary he could not break. Harper watched as Tanner gathered his belongings and walked toward the waiting vehicle. She did not celebrate. She simply breathed. For the first time in years, she could breathe inside her own home. Tanner thought losing the lake house was the end of his problems. He was wrong. A few weeks after Harper locked him out, she received another set of documents from her attorney. They revealed something her father had never talked about openly. The lake house was not the only thing he had protected. Years before his death, Walt Doyle had quietly purchased several parcels of land around Elk Ridge Lake. He had placed them inside another organization called the Doyle Land Trust. Harper stared at the maps spread across her kitchen table. Her father had not bought the land to become richer. He had bought it to protect the shoreline. And now, she discovered, those very parcels stood directly in the path of Tanner's newest business project. Tanner's company was planning a luxury lakeside development. Private docks. Exclusive houses. Gated roads. Beautiful advertisements showing wealthy families enjoying a lake that local families had loved for generations. But there was one problem. Tanner needed access to land controlled by Harper's family trust. Dad wasn't protecting the land from strangers. He was protecting it from people who saw everything as something to sell. Harper looked at Otis. He knew this would happen. Otis nodded slowly. "Your father always said that someday someone would look at this lake and see money instead of memories." Harper took a deep breath. "What happens if I refuse?" Her attorney answered calmly. "Then Tanner's project has a serious problem." A week later, the county development hearing began. Tanner entered the room wearing an expensive suit. Presley walked beside him carrying a tablet. Marlene sat behind them, dressed perfectly, as though this were another event where she expected her family to win. Then Tanner looked toward the audience. And saw Harper. His expression changed instantly. She was sitting quietly near the front. No tears. No anger. No fear. Just confidence. The presentation began. Large images appeared on the screen. Luxury homes. Private beaches. Golden sunsets. The project was described as progress. Then an elderly woman named Mrs. Odom stood. "My husband died fishing on that lake," she said softly. "My grandson still fishes from the public bank. What happens to families like ours when everything becomes private?" The room became quiet. Then Harper stood. "My name is Harper Doyle." Tanner stared at her. She continued. "I am the sole trustee of the Doyle Land Trust. My family has protected this shoreline for 3 generations." She placed the documents on the table. "We support responsible development. But we do not support projects that treat community history as an obstacle." Tanner stood. "You are doing this because of our divorce." Harper looked at him. "No, Tanner. I am doing this because it is my responsibility." He stepped closer. "You could help everyone by allowing this project to move forward." Harper shook her head. "You could build your project somewhere else." One of the investors leaned toward another and whispered, "What exactly happens if the trust refuses access?" Harper's attorney answered before Tanner could. "The project loses several critical access points." The investor's expression changed. Then another investor began asking questions. Environmental concerns. Water rights. Dock permits. Access agreements. The beautiful presentation suddenly looked much less beautiful. Tanner tried to defend the project, but the confidence in the room was disappearing. One investor left. Then another. Within weeks, the project began collapsing. Tanner's company placed him on leave. Presley left for another job. And Marlene stopped defending her son when people began asking uncomfortable questions. Months earlier, Tanner had believed Harper was the woman he could replace. Now he had lost his marriage, his mistress, his reputation, and the business project he believed would make him powerful. Harper returned to the lake house that evening. The sun was setting over the water. She stood on the dock where Tanner had once told her she was no longer his wife. This time, she smiled. Not because Tanner had lost everything, but because she had finally found herself again. Moral: the strongest comeback is not revenge. It is becoming powerful enough to protect what truly matters.